Thunder!
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's been about 2 weeks since the Switch 2 was finally revealed, and while yes, finally seeing the hardware revealed was really nice, I gotta admit that the whole thing pretty much leaking ahead of time took a lot of energy out of it. Now don't get me wrong, seeing the Switch 2, actually seeing it from an official Nintendo trailer was really exciting, but we kinda already knew what this thing was gonna look like from leaks. However, there was one thing that no one really knew about going into this trailer. A new Mario Kart. After essentially playing the exact same Mario Kart for over a decade, it's hard not to get at least a little bit excited about finally getting a brand new entry. Now, we didn't see a whole lot in the little bit of footage that we got, but what we did see is still enough to really get the gears turning. I've been really taking the time to think about what we could potentially get out of this new entry, and I have a ton of ideas. So let's just get started. First off, I think that we're going to have a very sizable roster this time around. In the footage, we can clearly see that there are 24 starting positions on the track. Now that is a lot of racers to have on a course at one time. That immediately makes me think that we're going to get a much bigger roster this time around because of that. So what is this roster going to look like? Well, we already have a decent amount of characters confirmed based on the footage, and since all of them are already present in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I think it's a safe assumption that the entire roster from that game is going to return this time around, including the guest characters. Now I do think that the roster could still be condensed down a bit. I think that all the characters that are basically just variations of other characters could be turned into some sort of new skin system. For example, Pink Gold Peach, Cat Peach, even Peachette could easily be turned into skins for Peach. Dry Bowser and Dry Bones could be skins for Koopa Troopa and Bowser. You get the idea. Doing this cuts down the roster size a pretty decent amount, so now that we've condensed that existing roster, let's go over how the rest of the roster could look. I'm thinking that with the amount of characters in a race being increased to 24, a much more substantial roster would be needed in order to not always see the exact same characters over and over again. My condensed roster from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe comes to 41 characters, so I'm thinking that we can bring that number up to a nice even 60. Now another thing that I want to say is, while I do think that we're still going to get a few more guest characters in addition to the ones that are going to be carried over from 8 Deluxe, I don't think that this is going to be the Super Smash Kart that everyone thinks is coming. Before the footage, I would have assumed that a big crossover kart racer was most likely the next step for the series, but based on the fact that the footage showed exclusively Mario characters, not to mention in their more classic appearances, I think it's safe to say that the Mario universe is the main focus here. But I do think that this is going to be the Mario Kart that really branches out into all of the facets of the Mario universe. There is still so much untapped potential for the roster, and that's what I'm aiming to tap into with my roster ideas. Let's start with the first new additions. With Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and Funky Kong all being in 8 Deluxe, why not bring in the rest of the main Kong crew? Both Dixie and Cranky feel long overdue, and with Dixie already being in Tour, I think it makes sense to bring her into the next big entry. Another Donkey Kong rep that I want to see added is King K. Rool. K. Rool to me is what Bowser is to Mario. He's an incredibly important character in the Donkey Kong series, and while he hasn't been really used in recent games, the fan reception to seeing him make his grand return in Smash makes me hope that he sticks around at least for a little while. The next 5 characters that I want to add all made their debut in Tour, and I see no reason why they wouldn't be added to this new Mario Kart. Each one of these characters makes sense to add to the roster. King Babam represents Mario 64, Poochie gives more love to the Yoshi games, Chargin' Chuck and Monty Mole makes sense because Nintendo always likes to add more Mario enemies to the spin-off rosters, and Nabbit is a very common playable character nowadays. In fact, I'm surprised that he wasn't in the Booster Course Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now we can talk about some more truly brand new additions to Mario Kart. First up, we have Foreman Spike. Spike is a character that I never would have put in a Mario Kart game previously, but considering his recent relevancy from the movie and the general classic vibe this new entry seems to be going for, I think that Spike would be a great fit. Next up, we have EGAD. This is another character that I'm shocked hasn't been added yet. He's just as important to Luigi's Mansion as Luigi is, and with his technical prowess, I'm surprised that we have yet to see him get behind the wheel of a kart. And while we're talking about Luigi's Mansion, I also wouldn't be shocked if Luigi shows up as a skin for Luigi. These next 2 characters are both representing Mario Odyssey, Cappy and Madame Brood. Cappy, of course, being Mario's companion throughout the entirety of Mario Odyssey, feels deserving of a spot, and Madame Brood feels like a good way to represent the Broodals as a whole. I know that the Broodals aren't nearly as prolific in the games as the Koopalings, but it feels odd that none of them have been used in any spin-off since Odyssey's release. So Madame Brood feels like a good character to show love to that group. This next character is an interesting one because we never see Wario's side of the universe represented in Mario spin-offs. I'm gonna go with Captain Syrup, Wario's rival from the Wario Land series. I think it's about time that Wario's cast of characters gets some attention in the Mario spin-offs for once. And finally, Prince Florian, the Prince of the Flower Kingdom from the most recent Mario title, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. If we have Peach and Daisy representing the Mushroom Kingdom and Sarasa Land respectively, I see no reason why Flower Kingdom royalty can't join in the race as well. Okay, so the last characters that I want to talk about for the roster are the guest characters. Once again, while I don't think that this game should be Super Smash Kart, I don't think that some more guest characters would hurt. First up, we have Kirby. To me, Kirby has always felt like the next natural guest inclusion. So many people have been talking online about how they want him in the game, and he fits into the Mario cast pretty well. Not to mention, he's already been in sort of a kart racer of his own in the form of Air Ride. Next up, we have Captain Falcon, another pretty self-explanatory character. We already have multiple F-Zero tracks and the Blue Falcon as a kart body. Might as well add the driver along with it. And then we have Samus. This inclusion feels more based on timing than anything else, with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond coming out this year. I also think that seeing Samus drive around in a small version of her ship would be pretty funny to see. This next guest character is actually one that's been in Mario Kart before, Rob. Rob was last seen in Mario Kart DS, and he fit right in as a character back then, so why not bring him back for another game? Alright, so this last guest character is totally a personal pick. I don't think that this would happen at all, but Biff from ARMS would be a very fun addition in my opinion. I know it sounds completely out of left field, but I love ARMS, and I know that the series probably isn't big enough to warrant a guest spot, but I was thinking that with the ARMS dev team being the same devs as Mario Kart, it could be a fun nod towards the team's other projects. And with that, we have character number 60. I think that this would make for a pretty well-rounded roster, all things considered. I do want to mention, however, a notable exclusion from the discussion: RPG characters. Personally, I would love for characters like Geno or Fawful to join the roster, but with so many other Mario characters still left to choose from, they just don't feel that likely. Plus, the RPG characters have never been in spin-offs before, so I don't think that Nintendo would do it now. But I will say, if Nintendo decides to support this game with more characters throughout the Switch 2's life, I wouldn't entirely rule them out just yet. Okay, so now that we've gone over the roster, we gotta talk about game mechanics, arguably the most interesting part of each new Mario Kart. I think this game is going to have a gimmick to set itself apart from the others, especially since Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to be backwards compatible on the Switch 2. I think that the gimmick is just that everything is going to be bigger. The roster is going to be bigger to accommodate the larger racer count in each race. I also think that a lot of the new courses are just going to be bigger as well. We might have already gotten our first glimpse at a much longer course based on the footage that we already have. I would also love to see a much larger item pool. Nothing's wrong with the items that we already have in Mario Kart, but I'd just like to see more from all across Mario's universe. Get weird and wacky with the items this time around. Pull things from all across Mario's universe. Put in some of the new Mario Wonder items like the Bubble Flower or the Wonder Flower. Bring in more Donkey Kong items. Maybe even bring in some of the Wario Land power-ups. The possibilities are pretty endless for what they could add. And speaking of items, I do want to talk about the new mystery item that showed up in the footage. Everyone seems to have their own ideas about it. I saw some people say it could be a new Wonder Flower or maybe even a new item box like Frenzy from Mario Kart 7, but I'm going with what seems to be another popular theory in that it's meant to be some sort of glowing takeout bag. I think that definitely makes the most sense, especially with it being positioned outside of a restaurant. But what exactly could that bag do? We already can see that there are normal item boxes on the track, so this is probably some really unique resource. At first I thought that maybe it could be a return of like the character specific special moves from Double Dash, but then I thought that it couldn't be that because it would be weird to just have a designated spot where anyone can just immediately get a special move. No, instead, I think that this item is going to be some sort of unique meter mechanic. Like, you will have some sort of gauge that builds up. I think it's going to be a unique fuel. I'm not saying that the carts are going to run on gas now and you have to refill them in order to keep racing, but I do think that it could be fuel for some unique boosting mechanic. I'm thinking like the nitrous mechanic in Need for Speed. Now, why do I think that this is what the new gimmick is? Well, let's go back to the idea of bigger tracks with way more racers on them. It's going to be much easier to potentially fall super far behind the other racers now, so I think having some sort of new comeback mechanic would make a lot of sense. Maybe these new tracks are going to have different themed restaurants on the side of them, acting like pit stops where you can go to refill your boost gauge. Maybe they could even work in some sort of risk-reward type system with it. You can either use all of your boost at once to get ahead in a race, or maybe you want to hold on to it for when you really need it. They could even have shortcuts along the courses that can only be accessed by performing a super boost. I'm really thinking that this could be a great new mechanic for this entry, not too game-changing, but just enough to mix things up a bit. The other new gimmick I want to talk about doesn't necessarily deal with races themselves, but rather the courses, creating them, that is. That's right, I think that Mario Kart is finally going to get a course editor. It feels like it's been a long time coming, and I think it makes perfect sense to showcase the Switch 2's capabilities as well. What capabilities? Why the Joy-Con mouse functionality, of course. Nintendo hasn't outright confirmed it, but it's pretty damn obvious that the Joy-Cons are going to work as mice on the new system. A course creator would be a great way to show just how useful mouse functionality can be for the system. Being able to just draw an outline of a course with the mouse as well as clicking and dragging in different elements makes perfect sense to me. Now, before I wrap up, I do have one last gimmick that I want to mention, and once again, it relates to the mouse functionality. Now, this mechanic would be very weird, but I can absolutely see Nintendo doing it. So you know how in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe you can use gyro controls to steer your cart? What if, now hear me out, you can play the new Mario Kart with just the Joy-Con mouse? Really think about it. Mice are used for steering in PC games all the time, and you would still have buttons on the Joy-Con that you could use for drifting and using items, so it wouldn't be a lesser control option. I'm calling it right now. During the Switch 2 Direct in April, we're going to see Koizumi doing the whole thing that he did in the Switch 1 presentation, where he was just relaxing on the couch with the Joy-Con in each hand, but this time, he's just going to be laying on the couch, casually playing Mario Kart with just a single Joy-Con resting on the arm of the couch or something. It's a weird enough concept that I can totally see Nintendo wanting to invest in, and that is the exact type of wacky, out of left field stuff that I love Nintendo for. And that about does it for my thoughts on the new Mario Kart. Feels weird to be talking so much about this game when we still know very little, but I guess that's part of the fun of going into a new system launch. I should probably give my prediction for a title as well. It's probably going to be called Mario Kart X or 10. I fully agree with the idea that Nintendo sees Tour as 9. If they don't go with a numbered name though, I think I'm going to go with one of my Mario Kart name concepts from a while back, Mario Kart Marathon. Feels fitting, especially if they want to do the idea of having really big courses this time around, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. For now, I think that's enough out of me. So if you guys like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Later.